So for example 1, what I want you to do is I want you to find the interest as a calculation from I is equal to PRT. Now, when we use this, you notice I'm going to write all my variables down the side. I start with I and I end with T. This will allow me to fill out the information I have. Now, this problem says to calculate how much interest is earned if $2,000, which is our principal, P, and it's invested at 4.5%. So let's go and change that into a decimal. It means the rate, R, is 4.5 divided by 100, which comes out to 0.045. And our time is determined by the last part of our problem, which says that we have to do this for 26 weeks. Now we need to convert that by dividing by 52, because there's 52 weeks in a year. And so T is 26 divided by 52, which gives us 0.5. Now, if you're good, you would just take the 0.45, the 2,000, and the 0.5 and multiply them all together in I is equal to PRT. Most mathematicians literally write it like this. I is equal to 2,000 times 0.045 and then 0.5, and then punch that in your calculator. You end up with I is equal to 45. Now what does that mean? There we'd say the interest earned is $45. Now what you can do, if you, instead of basically calculating all of these decimals here, which are useful, you could just punch this in here and this in here and do your calculation if you wanted to. It's up to you. I leave that to you. So now, the last part of the problem is how much is the investment worth? That is actually talking about the total, which is just A is equal to I plus P. So let's go. A equals, we don't know what that is. P equals, we do know what that is, which is $2,000. And I is literally 45. So A is equal to P plus I. And we end up with 2,000 plus 45, which is $2,045. And those are our answers for each part, and we have to do our final statement. In 26 weeks, the investment is worth $2,045, and we're done. Now, let's focus on the next part of our problem here. When we talk about the concept of simple interest, we can take a look at this triangle here. This triangle tells us that I is equal to P times R times T. So I would tend to always write that this is a times here, and then we have another times here, and then this line that's underneath my I means I divided by those things. So let's say I want to find I. What I would do is I literally just take the I, cover it up, and that would mean that we would have P times R times T. So that is what we would get here. On our first equation, I is equal to PRT. So, in order to find P, imagine we take this triangle, and what we're going to do is we're literally just going to cover up the P, which means that we've got I over R times T. So let's go and write that out. So we have I divided by, in brackets, R times T. Now, if I was looking for the rate, what I would do is I would do the same thing again that we did before. We're just going to cover up the r, which means that we have I divided by P times T. So let's do that right now. So we have I divided by, in brackets, P times T. Now, let's put a little addition. After we find our rate, we must, after calculation, we must change to a percentage. Change the decimal to a percentage, i.e. multiply by 100%. So now let's go and calculate T. So let's say I want to calculate T. Cover up my T in my triangle. So now that means I have I over P times R. I divided by, in brackets, P times R. And that is your time in weeks. So now let's go through some simple problems to find out P, R, and T. So this first problem is to calculate the principal. The principal, it says how much principal is needed to earn. Well, we got $500 in 2 years invested at 2.5%. Simple interest. So remember, our basic equation for our interest is, for our principal is P is equal to I divided by, in brackets, R times T. So let's go and put our variables down that we need. We needed I, we have P, we have R, and we have T, just like before. Now, we do know I. Let's see, our interest is $500. Isn't that needed? So this part here is our interest I. The T is 2 years. T is 2 years. It's already in years, so don't need to change it, but our 2.5% needs to be changed into a decimal. So we go 2.5 divided by 100 equals 0.025. And we punch that into our equation, and we have 500 divided by, in brackets, 0.025 times 2. So what this tells us is, if you're going to do this calculation, you're going to actually write on your calculator 500, you're going to go divided by, and then you're going to use the parenthesis 0.25, and then times 2, and then with an ending bracket, and then you get your answer. And in this case, when we do our final answer, we find out that our principal is $10,000. So we do our final statement as well. So now that is how we get our final answer. And we say we need $10,000 to be invested, or we could say we could start with $10,000. Now let's move on to the next problem. Now we're going to try and calculate the rate of simple interest. So I'm going to set up the equation, and then we'll do the problem. Now, this problem says what rate of simple interest is needed to get $7,000 to grow. So we need $7,000, but it says 7,000 growing to 10,000. So if it grows to 10,000, that there was a difference of 3,000. So that is our interest. Now, our principal, our amount that we start with, is 7,000. Our rate, we don't know, but our time is 5 years. So let's punch that into our equation here. Now, you do your calculations and you end up with R is equal to 0.086. But we need to change it into a decimal into an actual percentage. So therefore the rate is 8.6%. And how did we get that? We basically took 0.086 and times it by 100 to get 8.6. And that is where we got that number. Now let's do our final question. How long would it take 15,000 to grow to 2,000 simple interest at a rate of 3%? So we're looking for time, and time is t, which equals, well, I divided by P times R. So let's write out our I, P, R, T as before. We don't know what our time is. We do know what our rate is, which is 3%, which is 3 divided by 100, which equals 0.03. We know that our principal is, let's see, 15,000. And we know that our interest is growing up by 2,000. So we get 2,000. So let's just punch all that numbers in and you'll see what your answer is. So once you substitute, you get all of this, 2,000 divided by 5,000 times 0.03, which gives us t is equal to 11.11. We would say, therefore, it would take about 11.11 years.